Hang on, technical difficulties. How many engineers does it take? All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Borsky. This is Josh and Daniel, and we are Nudge. We are your very own invisible social co-pilot to navigate any conversation. So just a quick poll. I guess we're doing polls today. So just a quick poll and a show of hands. Who here has ever gotten that swift kick under the table from their friend or wife or husband or partner or business partner when they're at a meeting and they say the wrong thing, or they talk too much, or they say the wrong thing to the wrong person, or anything like that? Just a quick show of hands. Yeah, that's nearly every hand. And for those of you that didn't raise your hands, well, I respect your skills because I don't have them. So we started thinking about how to solve this problem, right? We started thinking about how do we fix social uncomfortableness or social awkwardness or anything like that. And we sort of had a light bulb moment, and we realized there's a whole group of people for whom not only is this problem real, but it's a real pain point that they face constantly. And that group of people is people with autism. Turns out people in general, but especially people with autism, spend a lot of time struggling with communication and understanding social cues and figuring out how to navigate conversations that for them might be uncomfortable. In fact, one of the interviews that we did with someone who has autism said it better than I could ever put it myself, which is everyone else seems to have a social manual that I just don't have. And so we set out to think about this problem and solve it. We developed a couple of key insights from people we talked to. We learned a few things. One, people with autism are immensely self-aware in general. They know they have it. They know they're different. They know people perceive them as different. Two, the far and away most useful tool in their arsenal for learning how to get by in daily life and social situations is conversation practice with a coach. By far, 100%, every single person we talked to said the same thing. And apparently I can't hold a clicker. Third, they want to fit in, just like any of the rest of us. But for them, it's even more important because, again, they already feel different and know they're perceived as different. The last thing they will ever do is put anything on themselves or wear anything or do anything that makes them even more stand out. So anything we build for them has to be absolutely invisible and completely undetectable by anyone but them. So the question then became, how do we build an invisible social coach or social co-pilot to help you navigate conversations in the world? And the answer to that question is Nudge.
All right, so how does Nudge work? Nudge utilizes your iPhone and your Apple Watch, and it acts as your co-pilot to help you navigate social situations and improve your social skills in real time. So let's take a look at that. In the case of someone with autism, they would launch Nudge and they would say, what skills am I interested in getting help with? So for someone with autism, potentially they would say, maybe I want to monitor that I'm not talking too much or talking too little. Or maybe I want to monitor that the other person is not getting bored or disconnected. So you configure Nudge, and then when you enter a social situation, you simply tap on your watch, and Nudge starts listening. It understands your conversation. It understands what conversation is happening with someone else, and it provides feedback on how the conversation is going. And here's the most important part, which is that feedback comes in the form of taps or using the haptic pulses on your watch and is completely undetectable to anybody else. After you have that conversation, you'll get a review of how the conversation went. We decided to tackle autism because the problem is really severe there and the market is big and growing. So currently, there are over 7.5 million Americans living with autism, and this number is growing rapidly. Those numbers are also mirrored throughout the world. So worldwide, there are over 75 million people who have been diagnosed with autism. So what's the opportunity? Well, we spent the last 24 hours and we talked to both adults living with autism and parents who had children living with autism. And what we found was really reassuring, at least to us as a business, which was that those people were very enthusiastic that this could definitely help them. In fact, the majority of people said they would be easily willing to spend between $10 to $20 a month in subscription fees. So even if we only go after the autism market, the opportunity here is huge.
And the thing is, we're not only going after the autism market. I have ADHD. I've had it my whole life, but I got diagnosed 3 years ago, mostly thanks to my wife bothering me about it over and over and over again until I finally tried to figure out what it was and whether I had it. Turns out, definitely. I talk too much, I talk a lot, I talk fast, and I talk about a lot of things that rabbit trail that actually doing it right now. So case in point. And of note, there are 3 times more people with ADHD than there are with autism. But even so, the market is actually much bigger than that because it turns out, as you saw just a few minutes ago, we don't all have autism. We don't all have ADHD, but pretty much all of us raised our hands, right? And the reason for that is because we could all use a nudge, right? Public speakers, we ooh, ah, a lot. We would love to stop that. First dates are very awkward. Help figuring out if they're bored or not would be fantastic. Job seekers need to know how their interviews are going. Salespeople need to know how their pitches are going. Managers need to be empathetic to their reports, and so on and so forth and so on. We could all use a social co-pilot sometimes to help us figure out how to navigate tense or high stakes social situations and conversations. It's just that we've found a real big pain point in autism that really matters. And again, to be clear, this has been 24 hours, right? There's a much bigger burgeoning market for us to attack once we have proven it through solving the problems for people with autism. And we're definitely the team to do it. So like I said, I'm Borsky, I have ADHD. This would be my 3rd company. I've had a previous successful exit, and I spent my whole life, actually since I was 13 or so, in cybersecurity. I spent a bunch of time doing offensive software security for the intelligence community before I started my last security company and sold it to Synopsys. Oh, and I got a computer science degree from MIT longer ago than I'd like to admit.
Hi, everyone. I'm Josh. I have been working for ages on my filler words, my ums, my ahs. I'm sure you didn't notice, but I just thought I'd put that out there. The other thing, I'm going to list my other social thing that I would be working on. I have a long laundry list, but I'll only list 2 here. My wife is so much better at social situations than I am. I go into parties and she's so much more engaging. And if I could have her as a co-pilot and just capture 5% of whatever she's doing, that would be worth it to me. As far as professional background, I've had founder roles, I've had engineering roles, I've had management roles at companies like Akamai and VMware, and I have experience leading voice teams at Amazon Alexa.
Hi, I'm Daniel. I was the founding engineer at Flutterflow, and I have a background in iOS and accessibility. I've worked at Apple, Facebook, and Google, and got my degree in computer science from UC Berkeley. And I was raised as an only child all my life in Iran. Shout out pair. And it was very lonely. It was very painful. I didn't have any friends growing up. And personally, why I am very adamant on working on this is because I care about solving this problem for my children. I want to make sure that my children are happy and that they have friends and that they can socialize and have a successful life growing up. So this is very important to me.
So with that, we're Nudge. We'd love to chat with you after the event and happy to answer questions now, hopefully more comfortably than before. Oh, and sign up for our waiting list at hellonudge.app or scan the QR code with our fancy logo in the middle.
Great. Okay, so that's Nudge. Any questions here on the team in the room for the team?
Thank you for the presentation. Hi. A lot of the autism cues that people miss are visual. So do you know if there's enough signal in the conversation that you can detect on your phone or watch that to solve the problem?
So really good question, actually. We thought about it for a long time. So Daniel came into this weekend going, man, I want to rebuild Google Glass. And we thought about it for a while. And you're right. There are a lot of social cues that are actually facial that something on your watch absolutely could not help with. But this is a starting point, right? So once we've figured out how to manage intonation and figure out timing and cadence and volume and intensity and things like this, we can absolutely expand to something else, but it has to be invisible. When we talked to the potential customers, one of the things that stood out is, yes, facial expressions are very important, but vocal conversations and tics and things like this are actually immensely important too, which is why a lot of times they do this behavior coaching and things like this actually over Zoom or over the phone, despite the fact that even on Zoom, you don't get the same body language information that you would in person. So you're right, it doesn't solve every problem for people with autism, but there is enough signal, we believe, and everybody we've spoken to seems to confirm that you can absolutely make a big impact in trying to help people manage the progress of a conversation through just what is said and how it's said.
I'll just add, one of the things that's been super helpful to us, and we've only been at this for 24 hours, is talking to the parents. We went in with a list of like 3 things that we knew about autism, like that we thought, okay, if we have those 3 things to detect, that'll be sufficient. And just talking to 5 people, like everybody names another thing. So I'd imagine all these things that people would want to detect, this list could potentially be really long. And the nice thing is it actually scales to a lot of us. Like, yeah, I'd like to detect if someone's getting bored or disengaged when I'm talking, or am I talking too much, or am I talking over someone? I think a lot of these things could apply to anyone.
I don't know if I'm allowed to pass a mic.
First of all, I think this is very interesting market, and my godson has autism as well. So I saw my friend raising the kid and the challenges associated with it. My question is more about the execution, because if you want the feedback to be traceable, so you have a watch and there's a limit, like cap of patterns that you can get, right? So let's say you feel the pattern, and how many actually pattern variations you can do on a watch?
It's a good question. So for just regular notifications, you can only do 1 or 2 types. There's strong taps and light taps. But if you have an application open, so you've opened it on your phone and then left it, or even if it's in the background, as long as it's open in the background on your phone, your watch can then get haptic feedback from the device that is not a notification. And those can be pretty much any pattern. So you can do short, 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 long, short, or whatever, right? And you can adjust it to be light or heavy feedback as well. But yeah, that's actually a really good question that we thought about because Daniel was like, it won't work. We can only do 1 or 2 taps, and they can only be short, heavier or light. And then after a bunch of research, we figured out that as long as the app is open in the background, so before you enter the social situation, you open it, then when you get in there, you tap on your watch, and you're good to go. Headphones would work too, potentially. We did consider that. The only issue there was in some situations, wearing a headphone again. Actually, I'll give you a perfect example. One of the people we talked to has sensory issues as part of their autism. And so when there's really loud sounds, or in general, just noise or bright lights, they can go over threshold and have a lot of trouble. But one of the things they wear is these high fidelity earplugs, which I actually wear also as a musician. But I didn't realize that the fact that they're really discreet and you can't really see them when you're wearing them is one of the most important things for her, because nobody asks because you can't see it. And even if they do notice it, they kind of look like jewelry, some of them. And to her, that was super important, right? And so the concept of wearing an earbud in a conversation can totally work. And we've also had some ideas where, like, if you lean your head one way, it might even suggest a prompt or whatever. Like, there's definitely things that you can do with that. But we sort of have this core concept that it has to be invisible. Otherwise, it's very easy to get into a place where they'd never use it. And so by keeping it invisible, it forces you to sort of figure out how to build a really good user experience for someone that doesn't want to be seen. Great question, though. Thank you.
First of all, it's a wonderful idea that I'm sure a lot of people would benefit a lot from. I don't have a question as much as a comment. Autism is a medical diagnosis, and so therefore the data that you're gathering is health data. There's been, you're not a healthcare provider, so you're not covered by HIPAA. And so that's sort of a regulatory gap that a lot of states are becoming more and more conscious of. So states are passing laws that are trying to fill that gap and are trying to extend HIPAA-like requirements to things like fitness trackers, wellness apps, mental health apps. So that's something that you really want to be conscious of as you go forward, as you pursue, your journey. That, okay, we're not covered by HIPAA. Yeah, it's a gap, but increasingly regulators are more and more conscious of that gap. So, HIPAA compliance is something that we nonetheless might want to look at just to get out in front of that.
Yeah, we actually completely agree. You're not the first person to have brought up that, hey, is this healthcare? Well, sort of, but not really. And I think one important aspect here is, like I said, my background is all in security. So one really important aspect in general is we're not recording anything. We are capturing it and not transcribing it, but capturing it and analyzing it in real time. And then the only thing that we store is metadata and statistics. That's it. But even so, it is also all stored locally on your phone, not anywhere in the cloud. And if we ever do move to it being stored remotely somewhere, I completely agree. One of the first things that we want to do is build a customer advisory board, or just an advisory board of medical professionals, frankly, that can help us through this, and of autism, people that work with people with autism and so on, ABA accredited psychologists and so on and so forth. It's absolutely one of the things we care about. And it's actually, we had two other ideas that we didn't build, one of which was specifically because it would have required a lot of regulatory approval and a lot of process in order to even get to market. And so, yeah, I completely agree. It's something that we are considering and are thinking about.